The champagne flutes clinked around me like tiny bells announcing my humiliation. I stood frozen in the grand ballroom of the Venetian Hotel, my emerald dress suddenly feeling too tight, too bright, too much for a woman who had spent the last 3 years becoming invisible. "Helena, you look like you've seen a ghost." Sophia's voice cut through the elegant chaos of the charity auction. Her hand gripped my elbow, steadying me even though she didn't yet know why I needed steadying. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away from the sight that had just shattered the fragile peace I'd built from the ruins of my old life. Bruno, my boyfriend of 2 years, the man who claimed he understood why I'd sacrificed my career at the Metropolitan Museum to care for my dying mother in this suffocating coastal town. The man who promised he'd wait for me to be ready to live again. He wasn't waiting anymore. His mouth was attached to Camilla's. My cousin Camilla. The same Camilla who'd helped me pack my mother's medications last week, who'd hugged me and said she admired my strength. They were pressed against the marble column near the silent auction tables, his hand tangled in her hair, her fingers clutching his lapels. Not a drunken mistake. Not a moment of weakness. This was familiar. Practiced. How long had this been happening? Oh my God. Sophia followed my gaze and sucked in a sharp breath. "Helena, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know, or I never would have dragged you here tonight." The room tilted. 3 years. I'd given up everything for 3 years. My position as assistant curator, my apartment in Greenwich Village, my entire identity as someone who mattered in the art world. I'd become Helena the caretaker, Helena the martyr, Helena the woman who put her life on hold. And for what? For a man who couldn't even wait until my mother was buried before finding someone else? No, not someone else. My own blood. The humiliation burned hotter than rage. Everyone would know. This was a small town masquerading as a city. By morning, every gallery owner, every artist, every person who'd watched me fade from promising curator to forgotten daughter would be whispering about poor Helena. Abandoned Helena. Pathetic Helena. "I need to leave." My voice came out strangled. "Absolutely. Let's get your coat." "No." Something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. And through that crack, the old Helena started to emerge. The one who'd negotiated with French art dealers, who'd stood her ground against billionaire collectors, who'd once been fearless. "I'm not running. Not this time." Sophia's eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't leave this ballroom like a wounded animal slinking away to die in private. I'd been invisible for too long. Tonight, I would be seen. My gaze swept the crowd, landing on a man standing alone near the bar. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Roman coins, all sharp angles and controlled power. He was watching the room with the detached assessment of someone who owned everything in it, and found it all mildly boring. Perfect. "Helena, what are you—" Sophia's protest faded as I walked away. My heels clicked against marble. Each step felt like reclaiming territory I'd surrendered. The man turned slightly as I approached, gray eyes flickering over me with cool interest. Up close, he was even more devastating. Mid-30s, maybe. The kind of handsome that didn't need to be charming because it simply was. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his mouth a firm line that suggested he rarely smiled and never begged. "I need you to kiss me," I said. One dark eyebrow lifted. "Excuse me? Right now. Make it convincing." I stepped closer, catching the scent of expensive cologne, cedar, and something darker, more dangerous. "There's a man across the room who needs to see me with someone else." "And I'm someone else?" His voice was deep, accented with something European I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. Or something more specific that my art history background should recognize but didn't. You're perfect. I placed my hand on his chest. Solid. Warm even through the layers of expensive fabric. You look like you could buy and sell this entire room. That's exactly what I need him to see. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or calculation. What's in it for me? He asked. The satisfaction of helping a stranger. I was aware of how desperate I sounded and didn't care. The old Helena had died the moment I watched Bruno's tongue slide into Camilla's mouth. This new version didn't have pride left to protect. Please. He studied me for a long moment. Then his hand came up to cup the back of my neck, fingers threading into my hair with surprising gentleness. If we're going to do this, he murmured, his mouth inches from mine, we do it properly. Then he kissed me. I'd expected performance, a show for Bruno's benefit. What I got was obliteration. His mouth claimed mine with an authority that made my knees weak. This wasn't a first kiss. It was a conquest. His lips moved against mine like he'd been kissing me for years, like he knew exactly how I tasted and wanted more. When his tongue swept into my mouth, I forgot about Bruno, forgot about Camilla, forgot about the last 3 colorless years of my life. This kiss was technicolor. My hands fisted in his lapels, pulling him closer. His arm wrapped around my waist, hauling me against a body that was all hard muscle and controlled strength. He kissed me like we were alone, like the ballroom full of witnesses didn't exist, like nothing existed except this moment, this heat, this perfect stranger who kissed like sin and tasted like salvation. When he finally pulled back, I was gasping. His gray eyes had darkened to smoke, and something predatory had entered his expression. Was that convincing enough? His thumb traced my lower lip. I couldn't speak, could barely think. I nodded. Helena? Bruno's voice cut through my haze. What the hell is going on? I turned, still in the stranger's arms, to find Bruno staring at us with Camilla clutched to his side. Her lipstick was smeared. His hair was mussed. They looked guilty and caught and small. Bruno. I was pleased at how steady my voice sounded. I see you've met Camilla. This isn't... We didn't... He stumbled over his excuses, face reddening. Save it. I leaned back against the stranger's chest, and his arm tightened possessively around my waist. The gesture felt natural, protective, like we'd done this 1,000 times before. I'm not interested in your explanations. Camilla's eyes were wide, darting between me and the man holding me. Helena, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I smiled, sharp as broken glass. I've been so focused on being the good daughter, the understanding girlfriend, that I forgot to actually live. Thank you both for the reminder. Bruno's gaze fixed on the stranger. Something shifted in his expression. Fear? No. Terror. Mr. Nero? He stammered. I didn't realize... Helena didn't mention... Mr. Nero? The name tickled something in my memory. Something Sophia had mentioned once about new money in town. About a mysterious art dealer who'd bought the old monastery on the cliffs. The stranger, Mr. Nero, smiled. It was not a kind smile. Helena and I prefer to keep our relationship private, he said smoothly. I'm sure you understand the value of discretion. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a threat wrapped in silk. Bruno went pale. Of course. Absolutely. We won't... He grabbed Camilla's arm. We should go. They fled. Actually fled. Camilla's heels skittered on the marble in their haste to escape. I frowned up at my unlikely savior. Who are you? His smile widened slightly, showing teeth. You don't know? Should I? Most people do. He released me slowly, as if reluctant to let go. Adriano Nero. I deal in antiquities. The name hit me like cold water. Adriano Nero. The Adriano Nero. The man who'd caused a scandal in the international art world by acquiring 3 pieces from a disputed Syrian collection. The man museums whispered about in hushed tones. The man rumored to have connections that went far beyond legitimate art dealing. Oh God, what had I done? You're wondering if you've made a terrible mistake, he observed, still watching me with those unsettling gray eyes. Have I? That depends. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture oddly intimate. Do you regret the kiss? I should say yes. Should apologize for using him. Should run as fast as Bruno and Camilla had run. Instead, I heard myself say, no. His smile turned genuine, devastating. Good. He pulled a card from his inner pocket and pressed it into my palm. When you're ready to stop running from your life, call me. Then he walked away, and the crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. People I recognized, gallery owners, collectors, even the mayor, stepped back with small nods of deference or fear. What had I just touched? Sophia appeared at my elbow, her face pale. Helena, do you have any idea who that was? Adriano Nero. Not just Adriano Nero. She grabbed my arm. That's the Adriano Nero, the man who owns half the art smuggling routes in the Mediterranean. The man who makes million-dollar deals over breakfast and ruins careers over dinner. Nobody touches him. Nobody even looks at him directly without permission. I stared at the card in my hand. Simple. Elegant. Just a name and a phone number embossed in silver on black cardstock. Helena. Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. You just kissed the most dangerous man in the art world. I looked across the ballroom to where Adriano stood, accepting a drink from a waiter who bowed. As if feeling my gaze, he turned. Our eyes met across 50 feet of polished marble and designer gowns. He raised his glass to me. A salute, a challenge, a promise. I know, I whispered back to Sophia. And God help me, I wanted to do it again. The gallery was quiet when I arrived the next morning, just how I liked it. Small, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a cafe that made decent coffee, it was everything my life had become. Modest, manageable, forgettable. I'd spent 3 years convincing myself that forgettable was safe, that small was smart, that I didn't miss the rush of authentication, the thrill of discovery, the weight of a museum's reputation resting on my expertise. All lies. Last night had proven that. My phone buzzed for the 19th time. Bruno. Again. I deleted the message without reading it and turned my attention to the new arrivals, a collection of local watercolors that a retired teacher hoped to sell. Sweet, harmless, utterly uninspiring. 3 years ago, I'd been consulting on a Caravaggio attribution. Now I was pricing sunset beach scenes at $200. The bell above the door chimed. We're not open yet, I called without looking up. I'm not here to browse. That voice, deep, accented, unforgettable. I froze, watercolor suspended in midair, before slowly turning. Adriano Nero stood in my gallery wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Morning sunlight slanted through the window, catching the silver at his temples, the sharp line of his jaw. He looked like a predator who'd wandered into a petting zoo and found it amusing. Mr. Nero. I set down the painting with careful precision, buying time to calm my racing heart. This is unexpected. Is it? He moved deeper into the space, gray eyes cataloging everything. The worn wooden floors, the mismatched frames, the clearance bin by the door. You gave me quite the performance last night. I thought I'd return the favor. Heat crawled up my neck. I apologize. I shouldn't have used you like that. You should apologize for many things, Helena. He stopped in front of a landscape, studying it with the focus of someone who actually knew art. Using me isn't one of them. The way he said my name, rolling the syllables like wine in his mouth, made something low in my belly tighten. Then what should I apologize for? He turned, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. For running away before I could properly introduce myself. For not calling the number I gave you. For hiding in this. He gestured around the gallery. Mausoleum of mediocrity when you should be authenticating masterpieces. I stiffened. You don't know anything about my life. I know everything about your life. He moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. Helena Alves, 31. Former assistant curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, specializing in Renaissance and Baroque periods. Published 2 well-received papers on Artemisia Gentileschi before you disappeared 3 years ago to care for your terminally ill mother, who is still alive, by the way. Defying the doctors, which means you've been in purgatory longer than you expected. My mouth went dry. How do you? I make it my business to know about interesting people. He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and something darker. The same scent that had haunted my dreams. And you, Helena, are very interesting. I'm really not. But my voice wavered. You kissed a stranger in front of 200 people. You didn't flinch when I touched you. Most people won't even make eye contact with me, yet you grabbed my lapels and pulled me closer. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly desperate. Maybe both, I whispered. His thumb traced my lower lip, the same gesture from last night. I have a proposition for you. Of course he did. Men like Adriano Nero didn't visit small galleries out of kindness. They wanted something. I'm not interested in... Bruno's vineyard is being sold at auction next month. He dropped the information like a bomb. Financial difficulties, hidden debts. The family is desperate to unload it quietly before the scandal goes public. I blinked. Bruno's family vineyard was their pride and joy. 5 generations of winemaking, the source of their local prestige. How do you know this? Adriano's smile was sharp. Because I'm the one who bought their debt. I own Bruno's precious vineyard now. Or I will, once the paperwork clears. The floor seemed to tilt. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to run it. I actually laughed. I know nothing about wine. You know about authentication, provenance, history. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed me the screen. The vineyard has a collection of rare vintage wines in its cellar, some dating back to the 1920s. Worth a fortune, if they're legitimate. I need someone with your expertise to authenticate them, catalog them, and then manage the commercial side of the operation. I stared at the photos, row after row of dusty bottles in an underground cellar. Even through the phone screen, I could see the potential. This was real work, important work. Why me? Because you're talented, because you're wasted here. He gestured at the gallery. And because I enjoyed our kiss, and I'd like to see if we can recreate that chemistry in a professional capacity. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is insane. This is an opportunity. He pocketed his phone. I'm offering you a way back into the world you left behind, a chance to use your skills on something that matters, and... His eyes glinted. A chance to watch your ex-boyfriend watch you succeed on his family's former property. The vindictive appeal of that shouldn't have worked. It did. What's the catch? No catch, just a job offer, generous salary, full autonomy over the authentication and cataloging. You report directly to me. He paused. And you have dinner with me tonight to discuss the details. There it was, the real ask. Mr. Nero. Adriano. He stepped closer, and I found myself backed against my desk. Call me Adriano, especially after you've had your tongue in my mouth. The crude words should have offended me. Instead, they sent heat spiraling through my core. This is a bad idea, I managed. Probably. His hand came to rest on the desk beside my hip, caging me in. But you're going to say yes anyway. Because you're tired of being small. Tired of being careful. Tired of punishing yourself for choosing love over ambition. I chose duty, I corrected. Not love. Did you love him, Bruno? The question hung between us. Honest answer. I didn't know anymore. I'd loved the idea of him. The safety. The normalcy. The promise that someone would be there when the dust settled from my mother's illness. But love? Real love? The kind that made you reckless and brave and alive? No. I'd never felt that. Not until a stranger kissed me like he was trying to consume me. Have dinner with me, Adriano said softly. One meal. If you hate the proposal, you walk away. I'll find someone else to authenticate the collection. And if I don't hate it? His smile was slow and dangerous. Then we'll discuss the other benefits of working closely together. I should say no. Should call Sophia and ask her to talk sense into me. Should run from this man and his gray eyes and his dangerous propositions. Instead, I heard myself ask, where and when? The restaurant was tucked into the cliffs overlooking the ocean, accessible only by a private road that wound through cypress trees. No sign, no publicity. Just a converted monastery with stone walls and candlelight. Adriano was waiting at a table on the terrace when I arrived, the sea breeze ruffling his dark hair. He'd traded his suit for a black button-down and tailored slacks. Casual elegance, the kind that cost a fortune to achieve. You came, he said, rising to pull out my chair. You sounded very certain I would. I was. He signaled to a waiter who materialized with wine. But I'm pleased to have my confidence validated. I watched as he poured, a red that caught the candlelight like liquid rubies. I did some research on you today. Did you? It wasn't a question. Adriano Nero, born in Naples, made your fortune in antiquities before you were 30, rumored to have connections to families that don't appreciate scrutiny. I met his gaze. Some people call you a criminal. Some people are unimaginative. He sipped his wine. I prefer entrepreneur. That's one word for it. What's the other word? Dangerous. His smile widened. I've been called worse. Usually by people who couldn't afford my services. Is that what this is? I gestured between us. A service? This is a negotiation. He set down his glass. I have something you want, a return to meaningful work. You have something I want, expertise I can't easily find elsewhere. The dinner is simply how civilized people conduct business. And the kiss last night? That was a bonus. His eyes darkened. One I'd very much like to repeat, but only if you're willing. The waiter arrived with the first course, scallops that looked like art on the plate. I waited until we were alone again before speaking. Tell me about the vineyard. Adriano leaned back, apparently pleased I was taking this seriously. 500 acres. The house is 19th century, recently updated. The cellars are older, original to the monastery that stood on the site before the vineyard. 3 full-time staff currently, but I'll need to hire more if we're going to modernize operations. We? You're managing the property. I'm financing it. That makes it we. He paused. Unless you'd prefer I micromanage, I should warn you, I have very exacting standards. Despite myself, I smiled. I'm familiar with exacting standards. I worked in museums. Exactly why I want you. He leaned forward. The collection in the cellar is extraordinary. Over 3,000 bottles, some of them irreplaceable. But without proper authentication and documentation, they're just expensive rumors. I need you to turn rumors into provenance. The professional part of me was already hooked. This was exactly the kind of project I'd missed, Painstaking research, historical detective work, the satisfaction of confirming or debunking attributions. How long do I have? Take as long as you need to do it right. 6 months. A year. However long it takes to build a catalog worthy of auction at Sotheby's. He paused. Though I should mention, your ex-boyfriend's family will still be living in town. You'll see them. Probably often. I can handle Bruno. Can you handle what everyone will say? The speculation about how you got this position? His gaze was steady. People will assume you're sleeping with me. Are you planning to sleep with me? Yes. No hesitation, no false modesty. But not because of the job. I wanted you the moment you grabbed my lapels and kissed me like the world was ending. The job is separate. Your salary is not dependent on whether you let me take you to bed. The bluntness should have offended me. Instead, it was refreshing. No games, no pretense. What if I say the job interests me but you don't? Then you get the job, and I get the pleasure of changing your mind. He smiled. I'm very patient when I want something. The waiter cleared our plates and brought the main course. Lamb that fell off the bone. Vegetables that tasted like summer. We ate in silence for a moment, the sound of the waves below filling the space between words. My mother doesn't have long, I said finally. Weeks, maybe. The doctors have stopped giving timelines. Adriano's expression softened. I know. If I take this job, I'll need flexibility. To be with her. To handle... My voice cracked. To handle whatever comes. You'll have it. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. Bring her to the vineyard if you want. The house is large, private, peaceful, better than a hospital. The offer was too generous, too personal. I pulled my hand back. Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's just business. You don't need me specifically. You could hire any number of wine experts. True. He sat back. But wine experts are boring. You're not boring. That's not an answer. Isn't it? He studied me like I was a painting he was considering acquiring. I've spent 20 years building an empire, making money, making enemies, making sure no one ever gets close enough to matter. Then you walked up to me and asked me to kiss you, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I felt something other than boredom. That's not love. That's novelty. I didn't say it was love. His voice was soft but firm. I said it was interesting, and I've learned to pay attention when things interest me, because those are the moments that change everything. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. I recognized that loneliness. Had lived it for 3 years while everyone else's life moved forward and mine stayed frozen. 1 month, I heard myself say. Trial basis. I'll authenticate the collection and give you a preliminary assessment. If it works, we'll discuss long-term. And us? I met his gaze. Us is separate. Like you said, but not off the table? The smart answer was yes. The safe answer was yes. But I was tired of smart and safe. Not off the table, I admitted. His smile could have lit the monastery. Then we have a deal. He raised his glass and I raised mine. The crystal chimed as they touched, a sound like possibility. To new beginnings, he said. To not running away, I countered. We drank, and I tasted the future. Uncertain, dangerous, and infinitely more alive than anything I'd felt in years. When he walked me to my car later, the moon was high and the ocean was a silver mirror. He opened my door but didn't step back, crowding me against the car in a way that made my pulse race. Can I kiss you goodnight? He asked. You're asking permission now. Last night, you needed me. Tonight, his hand came up to cup my face. Tonight, you need to choose this. And God help me, I did choose it. Chose to rise on my toes and close the distance between us. Chose to part my lips when his mouth claimed mine. chose to grab his shirt and pull him closer, deeper, harder. He kissed me like he had all the time in the world, and planned to use every second of it. Thorough, possessive, perfect. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I'll send Marco tomorrow with the contracts," he said, his voice rough. "Marco? My assistant. You'll like him. Everyone does." He pressed one more kiss to my forehead, surprisingly tender. "Get some sleep, Helena. Tomorrow, your new life begins." I watched him drive away in a black Mercedes that purred like a satisfied cat. Then I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to remember how to breathe normally. What had I just agreed to? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop overthinking. You made the right choice." I laughed despite myself and typed back, "How do you know I'm overthinking?" His response was immediate. "Because you're brilliant. Brilliant people always overthink. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. Sleep well, Helena. Dream of wine cellars and second chances." I did dream that night, but not of wine cellars. I dreamed of gray eyes and dangerous smiles and kisses that tasted like coming home to a place I'd never been. Marco arrived at 9 the next morning in a Tesla that looked like it cost more than my gallery. He was younger than I expected, maybe 28, with an easy smile and an efficiency that suggested he'd been managing Adriano's life for years. "Ms. Alvis." He handed me a leather portfolio. "The contracts, as promised. Mr. Nero suggested you have your attorney review them, though he's confident you'll find the terms more than fair." I didn't have an attorney, hadn't needed one in years, but I nodded like I did. "He also asked me to take you to the vineyard, if you're available today." Marco's tone was professional but warm. No pressure, though he did mention you might want to see what you're getting into before signing. "Smart. Show me the property. Let me fall in love with it. Make the contract a formality." I should have been annoyed by the manipulation. Instead, I was impressed. "Give me 20 minutes to change." The drive took 40 minutes through increasingly rural roads until we turned onto a private lane lined with olive trees. Then the vineyard spread before us, row after row of vines marching up gentle hills. The main house a sprawling stone structure that looked like it had grown from the earth itself. "The Moretti family built it in 1890, Marco said as we pulled up. "Bruno's great-great-grandfather. They've been making wine here ever since. Until Adriano bought their debt." I wondered if Bruno knew yet. If Camilla did. The house was beautiful in a faded way. Terracotta tiles, whitewashed walls, wooden shutters that needed paint. Not a mansion, but a home. The kind of place where generations had been born and married and buried. "The cellars are this way." Marco led me around the side of the house to a stone entrance set into the hill. Original to the monastery. Temperature controlled naturally by the earth. Perfect conditions for storage. He unlocked the heavy wooden door, and cool air wafted out, carrying the scent of stone and time. The cellar was magnificent. Vaulted ceilings, brick archways, and wine. Everywhere. Organized by year and region, each bottle cradled in its own nook like a precious child. I moved down the rows in a daze, running my fingers over labels that made my heart race. A 1947 Chateau d'Yquem, a 1921 Romanée Conti. Bottles that belonged in museums, not in a family's private collection. How did they acquire all this? I breathed, carefully, over generations. Marco consulted his tablet. The family kept meticulous records until about 15 years ago. After that, he shrugged. Things got less organized. Some bottles have questionable provenance. Others might be fake. That's where you come in. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, my mind already cataloging, organizing, planning the research that would be required. This was real work. Important work. the kind that would put my name back in circulation in the art and antiquities world. There's more. Marco's voice held amusement. Mr. Nero thought you might want to see the living quarters. He led me back up and into the main house. Inside was a revelation. Modern kitchen, comfortable furniture, walls painted in warm creams and soft blues. Someone with taste had renovated while keeping the structure's soul intact. The master suite. Marco opened a door to a bedroom that stole my breath. 4-poster bed, fireplace, French doors opening onto a private terrace overlooking the vineyard. This is where I'd be living. If you accept the position, yes. Mr. Nero thought you might want space to focus on the work. And Marco's expression softened. He mentioned your mother might be more comfortable here than in the hospital. I turned away, blinking back sudden tears. Adriano had thought of everything. The beautiful room, the peaceful setting, a place where my mother could spend her final days surrounded by beauty instead of beeping machines. He's very thorough, I managed. He's very interested in keeping you happy. Marco's tone was gentle. I've worked for him for 6 years. I've never seen him go to this much effort for anyone. You're trying to sell me on your boss. I'm trying to tell you he's not what people say. Yes, he's powerful. Yes, he makes deals that exist in gray areas. But he's also loyal, generous to people he cares about. And he doesn't let many people get close. Marco met my eyes. He's letting you close. That means something. I wanted to ask what it meant. Wanted Marco to decode Adriano for me, to tell me if this was real or just another acquisition for a man who collected valuable things. But I didn't, because part of me was afraid of the answer. Can I see the rest of the property? We spent the next 2 hours walking the grounds. Marco showed me the fermentation rooms, the bottling facility, the tasting room where the Moretti family had once hosted clients. All of it needed work, updating. But the bones were good. By the time we returned to the main house, I'd made my decision. Tell Adriano I'll take the job, I said. 1-month trial, like we discussed. Marco's smile was genuine. He'll be pleased. He's coming for dinner tonight, actually, to go over the details. Of course he was, because Adriano Nero didn't leave anything to chance. That evening, I found myself back at the vineyard, this time in jeans and a sweater, my hair pulled back in a ponytail. More myself than I'd been at the restaurant. Adriano arrived at 7 with bags of groceries and a smile that made my stomach flip. You're cooking? I asked, following him into the kitchen. I'm Italian, of course I'm cooking. He started unpacking, fresh pasta. Tomatoes, basil, garlic. Besides, I wanted to see you comfortable, not performing. Was I performing last night? A little. He pulled out a knife and started dicing garlic with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. You were trying to figure out if I was trustworthy, if this offer was real, if I was real. And am I any closer to answers? He looked up, gray eyes steady. I don't know. Are you? I hopped onto the counter, watching him work. Marco says you're not what people think. Marco is paid to say nice things about me. Is he paid to tell me you don't let people get close? Adriano's hand stilled. He told you that? Should he not have? No, he's right. Adriano resumed chopping, but his voice was different, softer. I learned young that closeness is a liability, that the people you love can be used against you. So I stopped letting people close, built walls, made sure no one could get through. What changed? He set down the knife and turned to face me fully. You kissed me like you were drowning and I was air, and for the first time in 20 years I wanted to let someone in. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. I slid off the counter and moved closer until we were inches apart. This is crazy, I whispered. We barely know each other. Then we'll learn. His hands came up to frame my face. I'm not promising you easy, Helena. My life is complicated, dangerous sometimes. But I can promise you real. No games, no lies. Just us, figuring this out as we go. I should have been terrified, should have run. Instead, I kissed him. This time there was no performance, no audience. Just two people who'd been lonely too long, finally finding someone who understood. We didn't make it to dinner. The pasta sat forgotten on the counter, while Adriano carried me to the master bedroom, our clothes leaving a trail behind us. He made love to me like he kissed, thoroughly, possessively, perfectly. And when I cried out his name, it wasn't performance. It was surrender. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled like lavender, the French doors open to let in the night breeze. I'm still taking the job, I said against his chest. He laughed, the sound rumbling through me. I should hope so. I didn't seduce you for your labor. Didn't you? No. He pressed a kiss to my hair. I seduced you because I couldn't stand the idea of you walking away. The job was just an excuse to keep you close. That's manipulative. That's honest. He tilted my face up to his. I want you, Helena, in my bed, in my life, in this vineyard, making it beautiful again. I'm not subtle about the things I want. I noticed. His smile was wicked. Then you also noticed I usually get them. I should have been offended. Should have reminded him I wasn't something to be acquired. But the truth was, I wanted this too. Wanted him. Wanted the life he was offering. Work that mattered. Passion that burned. A future that wasn't small and careful and safe. 1 month, I said again. Trial basis. 1 month, he agreed. And then you'll sign a real contract and admit you're mine. Confident, aren't you? He rolled, pinning me beneath him, his eyes dark with promise. When you know what you want, Helena, confidence is just preparation meeting opportunity. Then he kissed me again, and I stopped thinking about contracts and timelines and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Because sometimes the terrible ideas are the ones that save you. The first month at the vineyard passed in a blur of cataloging and chemistry. By day, I worked in the cellar, photographing bottles, cross-referencing records, building the authentication portfolio that would establish the collection's value. By night, Adriano and I explored each other with the same thoroughness I applied to my research. He was right about the gossip. By week 2, everyone in town knew I was living at the former Moretti vineyard, that Adriano Nero visited frequently, that my car was often still there in the mornings. I ran into Camilla at the pharmacy. She looked away, face red. I smiled and kept walking. I saw Bruno at the grocery store. He tried to approach. I turned down a different aisle. Let them talk. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't care what people thought. My mother noticed the change when I visited her at the care facility. You're glowing, she said, her voice weak but knowing. Is it the work or the man? Both, I admitted, holding her hand. Mama, I want to bring you to the vineyard. It's beautiful, peaceful. You'd have your own room with a view of the vines. Her eyes filled with tears. You found your way back, didn't you? To the life you were meant for. I'm trying. Don't try. Live. She squeezed my fingers. I'm ready when my time comes. Don't you dare use me as an excuse to stay small. 2 weeks later, we moved her to the vineyard. Hospice nurses came daily. Adriano hired a full-time caregiver. My mother spent her mornings on the terrace, wrapped in blankets, watching the vines turn gold with autumn. He's good to you, she said one afternoon when Adriano arrived with flowers. He is, I agreed. Is he good for you? Different question. Harder answer. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm happy, Mama. For the first time in so long, I'm happy. She smiled. then that's enough. She died 3 days later, in her sleep, with the smell of lavender drifting through the open windows. Adriano held me through the grief, handled the arrangements, stood beside me at the funeral while the town whispered about how quickly I'd moved on, how convenient that the rich art dealer had swept in to save poor Helena. I didn't care. Let them whisper. They didn't know that Adriano sat with me in the cellar at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, that he read poetry to me in Italian when words failed, that he understood loss in a way Bruno never had. My mother died when I was 16, he told me one night, both of us sprawled on the library floor with wine and memories. Cancer. She made me promise to live big, to not waste the time she didn't get. Did you keep the promise? Every day. He pulled me closer. Even the questionable choices, especially those, were about refusing to be small, refusing to apologize for wanting more. Is that what I am? A questionable choice? His laugh was soft. You're the best choice I've made in 20 years. By month 3, the authentication was complete. The collection was legitimate, 90% verified, the remaining 10% valuable, even as curiosities. Sotheby's was interested in an auction. Collectors were calling. The vineyard was profitable again. And I was in love. I didn't tell Adriano, didn't know how to say the words without feeling vulnerable. But I thought he knew. Thought he felt it too in the way he looked at me across the dinner table, the way he reached for me in sleep, the way he said my name like a prayer. Then the letter arrived. Federal investigation, antiquities smuggling. Adriano Nero named as a person of interest. I found it on his desk, half hidden under other papers. My hands shook as I read the legal jargon that boiled down to one truth. The man I loved was exactly what people said he was. A criminal. When he came home that evening, I was waiting in the library with the letter. How long have you known? I asked. He saw what I was holding and went still. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I laughed, the sound bitter. We've been sleeping together for 3 months, and you've known for 6 weeks that you're under federal investigation? I was handling it. Handling it? Adriano, this says they have evidence, witnesses, documents. I stood, pacing. This says you've been smuggling art out of conflict zones for a decade. I've been preserving it. His voice was hard, preventing it from being destroyed by war or sold to line the pockets of dictators. Yes, I bypassed legal channels. Yes, I made money. But the art is safe, in museums, in collections where it will be protected. That's not how the law works. The law doesn't care about preservation. It cares about jurisdiction and paperwork, and letting valuable pieces rot in war zones because the politics are too complicated. He moved closer. Helena, I've never lied about who I am. You've never told me the truth either. Tears burned my eyes. I asked you once if you were dangerous. You said you preferred entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur, one who operates in gray areas. I told you that. Gray areas, not federal crimes. I threw the letter at him. What happens now? To you? To the vineyard? To everything we've built? I have lawyers. Good ones. They'll handle it. And if they can't? If you go to prison? My voice broke. I can't do this again, Adriano. I can't love someone and watch them disappear. I'm not disappearing. You might not have a choice. I grabbed my jacket. I need space. Time to think. Helena. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't tell me it'll be fine. Don't tell me you'll handle it. Just give me time. I left before he could argue, drove to Sophia's apartment and cried on her couch while she made tea and didn't say I told you so. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I don't know. I stared at the ceiling. I love him. God help me, I love him, but I can't lose myself again. Can't build my life around someone who might be taken away. Then don't build your life around him. Sophia sat beside me. Build your life around you, your work, your passion, and let him be part of it, whatever that looks like. What if he goes to prison? Then you visit him if you want, or you don't, but you don't stop living either way. She squeezed my hand. You're not the same woman who sacrificed everything for duty. Don't sacrifice yourself for fear either. I stayed at Sophia's for 3 days, long enough to miss Adriano with an ache that felt like withdrawal, long enough to realize that whatever happened, I couldn't walk away. Not from him, not from us. When I returned to the vineyard, he was in the cellar, cataloging the new arrivals. He looked up when I entered, and the hope in his eyes nearly broke me. I'm staying, I said without preamble, but we need rules. Name them. No more secrets. If you're in trouble, I need to know, all of it. I moved closer. I won't be protected from reality. Done. And if this goes to trial, if you're convicted, I'm not putting my life on hold. I'll visit, I'll support you, but I'm still living, still working, still building something that's mine. I wouldn't want it any other way. He pulled me close. Anything else? Yes. I looked up at him. I love you. And I need to know if you love me back, or if this is just... He kissed me before I could finish. Deep, possessive, perfect. I love you, he said against my mouth. I've loved you since you grabbed my lapels and kissed me like the world was ending. I was just waiting for you to catch up. I laughed through tears. Arrogant. Confident, he corrected, his smile wicked. There's a difference. We made love right there in the cellar, surrounded by wine and history and the uncertain future. And when it was over, we lay on the stone floor, breathless and tangled. Whatever happens, I said, we face it together. Together. He agreed. Outside, the vines continued their ancient cycle, indifferent to human drama. Inside, two people who'd been lost found each other in the ruins of their carefully constructed lives, and decided that ruin looked a lot like salvation. The trial lasted 8 weeks. 8 weeks of headlines, camera crews camped outside the courthouse, and testimony that painted Adriano as everything from a cultural hero to an international criminal. I sat in the gallery every day, dressed in simple elegance, my presence a statement. I believe in this man. The prosecution had documents, witnesses, a paper trail of dubious acquisitions spanning a decade. They painted Adriano as a profiteer who'd exploited war-torn countries for personal gain. The defense countered with museum curators who testified that Adriano had saved priceless artifacts from destruction, with letters from governments thanking him for preserving cultural heritage, with evidence that every piece he'd acquired had ended up in public collections, not private vaults. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on 2 counts of customs violations. Not guilty on smuggling. Not guilty on racketeering. The judge sentenced him to 18 months, with possibility of early release for good behavior. I watched Adriano accept the verdict without flinching, his gray eyes finding mine across the courtroom. I love you, he mouthed. I love you too, I mouthed back. 6 months into his sentence, I visited him on a Tuesday morning. The visiting room was sterile and sad, but Adriano smiled when he saw me. You look beautiful, he said, taking the seat across from me. I look pregnant. I placed my hand on the small bump visible beneath my dress. 4 months. His eyes went wide. Helena? Surprise. I grinned through sudden tears. I found out 2 weeks ago. Wanted to tell you in person. He reached across the table, and I met him halfway, our fingers interlacing. A baby. Our baby. I squeezed his hand. Your lawyer says you'll be out in 6 months if you keep up good behavior. You'll be home before she's born. She? Intuition. I smiled. The vineyard is doing well, by the way. We shipped our first international order last week, and Sotheby's is planning the auction for spring. You're amazing. I'm surviving. I met his eyes. I miss you. Every day. But I'm not falling apart. I'm building something. For us. For her. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I grinned. But you're stuck with me anyway. The guard called time. Adriano stood reluctantly, but not before pressing his palm against the glass between us. I matched it, wishing I could feel his skin instead of cold barrier. I love you, he said. I love you too. Come home to us. He did. 4 months later, with 2 months left in my pregnancy, Adriano walked out of minimum security and into the vineyard where I waited. I'd planned to be dignified, composed. Instead, I waddled down the terrace steps as fast as my swollen belly allowed and threw myself into his arms. He caught me, laughing, spinning us both before setting me carefully down. You're enormous. You're an ass. I was crying and laughing at the same time. Welcome home. He dropped to his knees and placed both hands on my belly. Hello, little one. Your papa is finally here. The baby kicked, hard, right against his palm. Adriano's face transformed with wonder. She knows you, I whispered. Of course she does. He looked up at me, eyes bright. I've been talking to her every night. In here. He pressed a hand to his heart. Telling her about her mama. About the life we're going to build. That night we had dinner on the terrace. Just the two of us and the baby between us. Adriano told me about prison. About the men he'd met. About the clarity that came from having nothing but time to think. I'm done with the gray areas, he said, refilling my water glass. No more questionable acquisitions. The vineyard, the legitimate consulting. That's enough. More than enough. You're sure? I'm sure. He covered my hand with his. I spent 18 months away from you. Away from this. I'm not risking it again. Not for any amount of money or art or excitement. 2 months later, our daughter was born at sunrise. 8 pounds, dark hair, and gray eyes that were already judging the world around her. She's perfect, Adriano breathed, cradling her with surprising competence. She's absolutely perfect. She needs a name. He looked at me, then back at our daughter. Lucia, after my mother. Lucia Nero. I tested it out. I like it. We married a week later, in the vineyard at sunset, with Lucia sleeping in Sophia's arms and a handful of friends as witnesses. No press, no cameras, just us and the vines and the life we'd built from a single impulsive kiss. The priest pronounced us husband and wife. Adriano kissed me like he had that first night. Possessively, thoroughly, perfectly. Forever, he murmured against my lips. Forever, I agreed. That evening, after the guests had left and Lucia was asleep in her bassinet, Adriano and I stood on the terrace with glasses of the vineyard's first vintage. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass. To the woman who kissed a stranger and changed his life. He clinked his glass against mine. We drank, watching the sun set over the vines we'd saved together. In the distance, the ocean glittered like scattered diamonds. Closer, our daughter slept peacefully, unaware that her existence was the result of her mother's desperate gamble and her father's dangerous past. I leaned into Adriano's warmth, his arm automatically coming around me. Any regrets? I asked. Not one. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You? I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, small, scared, sacrificing herself for duty. Then I thought about the woman I'd become. Strong, passionate, building an empire from wine and love and second chances. Not one, I said. And I meant it. every word. Because sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that saves you, and sometimes the forbidden kiss is the one that leads you home.